Hey everybody, this is Terry Mitchell with the Voice on Fire interview series for 2021. Now, if you haven't been following along, I did quite a number of interviews throughout last year in 2020. And this year I've started out honestly wanting to interview the same caliber of amazing people. The interviews are focused on talking with action takers, difference makers, people that act as advocates, as change makers, people that are doing things to help either their local community, nationally or internationally. The Voice on Fire is about people that are speaking up and speaking out. And one of my guests today is Rana Ebrahimi, and we had the great opportunity to meet last year, Rana, and it's lovely to have you on Voice on Fire.
Hello, Terry. Nice to meet you again online.
Fantastic, fantastic. So today's interview, Rana, I'd love to share with our audience what it is you do. Now, I've got three really fabulous questions that I always love to ask. They are what you do, who you do it for, and why you do it. Let's start with what it is you do.
So, giving a context of the United Nations to what I do, I started to work in 2004 for some international NGOs after a huge disaster in Iran, an earthquake. And I've learned how to work with communities and assess the needs of those who are in an emergency and are devastated and they need our help. So I became a humanitarian aid worker since 2003 to 2004, and I continued my work until I joined the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, or Refugee Agency of United Nations in 2012. In the beginning, I was a team leader for a team working on community and social work. And then I became the first Iranian woman as a head of office in a city called Isfahan. And I was responsible for all the Afghan and Iraqi refugees who were in the province of Isfahan with 120,000 refugees.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And when you say you were the first Iranian woman, that's obviously quite a strong accolade. Tell us a little bit more about your role. You mentioned that you were the responsible person as head of office. Just share a little bit more about what that meant. Obviously, working on behalf of refugees, that's quite a responsible role. Share a little bit more about what you were doing and some of the highlights.
Sure. Well, it's I'm saying I was the first woman because we had international women who were head of office, and we had 5 branches. When I joined the office in Isfahan, it was a small repatriation center, but I was successful to recruit more people through years and get more budget to improve that office, that small office, to a bigger office and recognize it as a branch for UNHCR from headquarters, which was in the capital city. And among Iranian people, we didn't have really a woman with the title of head of office in UNHCR until I got that title. And I'm very proud of that. I had sometimes to just jump on the table and fight for getting more budget and having strong and hard negotiation with government. And the responsibility of the UNHCR is getting to our mandate in UNHCR, that is protection of asylum seekers and refugees. And asylum seekers and refugees have specific definition under UNHCR mandate, or those who have fear of persecution in their own countries because of any reason related to that. And they are identified under the convention for refugees. So Iran is one of the signatory countries of this convention, and they actually have the country as a responsibility as well. And they welcomed the Afghan refugees for 4 decades. And UNHCR responsibility was supporting the country to protect these refugees. And with protection, we have different levels and 4 pillars of education, make sure everybody are going to school and having proper primary education until diploma, then having the livelihood, make sure they are employed, they have an income and they can support their families. We have the health, primary health, that Iran was very progressive for that, because it's the first and I think only country in the world that has universal insurance for refugees. Oh, wow. So that was really interesting, and it's usually not reflected well in media, mm-hmm. that Iran is struggling itself with 85 million people, and also has 3 million refugees, mm-hmm. that only 1.5 million of them are identified under this refugee convention, and the rest are staying in the country together with the others. Without any identification of the refugee.
Oh, wow. And that obviously is a huge situation, because, 1 million plus people that don't have an identity in a lot of ways. They don't have a country that they can go home to. They don't have a country that recognizes them as citizens. Where do they get their support? It must be an unbelievably stressful situation. And as you say, the one thing that you have reason to be proud of is that you were able to step into a very small office as a woman at the head of that office for the first time in that particular situation, and then learning how to navigate that world and negotiate with government to increase budgets, and recognizing that you are, as you were talking, the 120,000 people, that is a lot of people for which your office and you were responsible for. Were there any highlights in that situation where there were the good things that you were able to say, this is what we achieved, this is the kind of activity that we were involved in, and these are some of the results? What's some of the stories you can share there?
Well, I think I'm proud of all of those 7 years. And I think the fact that we were all very passionate and motivated to support the refugees, and we were handling something like 30 to 40 cases per day, and we could help people, was very important. And the way that we supported people, sometimes you cannot see the impact of supporting or helping somebody, mm-hmm. but there are some aspects, some projects that had really a tangible outcome for us. Something like repatriation, because every day we were repatriating, we were supporting refugees if they wanted to repatriate to their own country, and we were seeing how happy they are and how they look forward to establish their life again in their own motherland, mm-hmm. and the feeling of the belonging that these repatriated people had. And the other one that I'm really proud of is we have an agreement with 5-6 countries for resettlement. It's for the families or people who have a fear of persecution and cannot integrate or settle in a country of host, mm-hmm. and they have to move to another country. Australia was very generous and is one of the countries that opened the doors for this type of people. Usually these are women, young women, and women who have not a male support. So usually they have young children, their husband was killed in the war. They just moved and ran away with barefoot to Iran, and they could not settle in Iran because finding a job was not easy for that mother. And we were processing their cases, and we could send them to different countries. Every year we were famous for processing a lot of cases. Mm. And I was always hearing that embassies are happy with what we are doing, and the cases that it's amazing, because you see a family who are going somewhere and they're happy because they're sure that their children have a future. Yeah. And they can live a happy life in another country. It's not always easy. It's sometimes not what they dreamed of, but at least I think they did so many sacrifices for these children, and they still bring them here, and at least children will have a better life.
Yeah, yeah. And at some point in time, of course, those children may or may not be able to return to the country of origin. But obviously, when there's so many upheavals going around the world, like Myanmar is one that's flared up recently, and there are crises across Eritrea, and there are places across Africa that are just in turmoil. Not to mention, there are other countries in places around the world that we probably don't even hear of in the media, where there are some terrible, terrible situations going on. Maybe it's not all war, maybe it's not all the militia and the politics that are taking place. Sometimes it can be illness, and it can be poverty, it can be famine, it can be terrible, terrible things. But just knowing that we are a global community, and I think that's something that COVID has possibly taught many of us, that we are not we're not isolated. And for those of us who live in Australia, and anyone watching this obviously will probably tell by my accent that I'm very much Australian. Rana is in Melbourne as well with me. So, we've been through the Melbourne version of COVID lockdown. So we know how tough it has been for us. But there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people in dreadful situations, not only because of COVID, but because of perhaps there's already a famine or a war taking place, or there's been a flood, or there's been an earthquake, as you mentioned earlier. Those things are taking place around the world. And I think COVID perhaps has taught us to look globally. What can we do collectively as a united population to actually help people that may not be in as good a situation as what we ourselves are in? And I think that's why I find what you've been talking about and the stories that you share and the roles that you have had are really just, they show that it's possible for one person to make a difference. And I think that's really, really valuable. And I totally applaud you for what you've been doing. In terms of what you do, it's amazing what you do, and who you do it for is obviously a lot to do with the refugees across various locations. And what is it that drives you to do that? Why do you do it?
Well, I think since I became a humanitarian aid worker, it stayed with me, and it became an identity that I cannot remove from my core values. Mm-hmm. And it's the basics of human equity and the equality that we need, and human rights that we need among the community and society. And I very much believe that it doesn't matter if I'm a young immigrant woman, I still have a voice, and I still need to do something and contribute to the society that I'm living in. Exactly as you said, we are the global village. We are living together. We are impacting and affecting each other's life. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that this impact is positive. Yeah. Even if it's very small, if it's just for our neighbors or for a very small community.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the things that really stands out is that as a person involved in the sorts of things that you do, you are a representation of what's possible. That you can come from a different situation, you can move to another country, you may have had to have learn a new language, but it's possible that with the supports and with the drive and the experience that and I think this is critical, and share with me what you think, but I think that because you have the lived experience, you're able to relate to other people that may be going through something similar. Do you find that that's also something that drives you, your lived experience and your personal understanding of those situations?
Exactly. It's not the lived experience, it's the story that you need to share. And I'm not the first person, and I will not be the last person. So if I cannot share that story and move it toward among the community, it will stop. So if you want to create that wave of change, you need to speak about it, you need to share your story and talk about it. It's really important. And I think it's getting back to what you just asked, why I'm doing it, because I don't want it to stop. It's the change is important, even very small. And I know it's not always fast and furious and getting to the results very quickly, but we need to start now to see the change in next generation at least.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So with your role with United Nations now, I believe that you also are involved with Cancer Council Victoria. Tell us a little bit about what that role is and what took you to that role, why you became involved there.
It's a good question. When I moved to Australia, I brought with myself the experience and the motivation to continue my work here. It was not that easy. I kept having projects and completing them and handing them over and going for another job. But I got to Cancer Council as an engagement manager, and I believe I'm using all the experiences of this year here to motivate the community to have the screening for the cancer types like cervical and bowel screening, and share them the knowledge and share them the importance. At the same time, make sure that it's an accessible service and it has the level of equity we need for that. So I'm working with the prevention team. It has a good part because I have the lived experience of cancer as well, and to me it's really important to share with the community. You need to take care of yourself before you get sick. And that's the message that every day I'm working on it, and it's for the whole Victoria.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with regards to self-care and taking care of your health. And it's really sad, I think, that we see so many people who, without realizing it, because poor health can actually creep up on you quite insidiously, meaning, for one day you might feel a little bit unwell, but that little bit unwell might be how you feel for 6 months, and then something else a little bit unwell adds to that. And every day you just live with it. So you don't realize just how much it has changed your experience of being well. And after a period of time, maybe 12, 18 months, you start realizing you're not well. But unfortunately, you've been unwell for probably a long time, and you just never noticed how significantly it was impacting you because it's crept up on you. And I find I've personally been through some health challenges myself. So that's something that I've experienced personally. And it's really sad to see, from my perspective at least, what it looks like when other people are unwell and they don't realize they're unwell. And that comes back to self-care and the education, as you mentioned. If we can educate people and remind them that it does pay to be taking care of yourself so that you don't become unwell, or at least minimize the chances that if you do become unwell, it won't have a devastating impact on you. So in terms of the education, what is it that you're doing in that role?
Well, you pointed out a really important point, because a lot of times, especially before COVID, I think we were taking our health for granted. And right now it's something like an awakening for all of us, that it's not for granted. I know that we have problems. We are not prioritizing our health, and we think we will be always like this, young and healthy. But in fact, the COVID showed us, no, it's not true. Some virus can remove us from the earth, and we need to take care of that. So regarding the education of that, we are considering people's barriers to do screening, and we want to enable them and equip them for the opportunity to use this service, because it's a free service. We are lucky again, And we should not take it for granted that we are in Australia and we have this service. It's something for us that we can use. It's maybe it's for me as an immigrant, it's something else that I came to this country to have this service for my health and use it, and also to share with the others and let the others know that they should use that as well.
Yeah, you make a good point there, that other countries, and certainly I have a lot of contacts in a lot of countries around the world that share with me that their health services are just so diminished. They don't have the facilities, the governments don't put the funding into them, or they don't have a government that's even reliable in the first place, obviously because of things like the war crises or civil unrest that might be going on. We really, I think a lot of the times we forget that we take complete advantage of or take for granted that we have all these health services, and a lot of the time, because we live in such a good health system based country, and obviously it's got its problems, but from a perspective compared to other places around the world, because we are exposed to just regular everyday good health, we forget that we can be vulnerable, and we also can become unwell very, very quickly, and we can suddenly find ourselves faced with the changing quality of life that can draw everything just to a complete point of abrupt stop. Like if you become unwell, your life can just completely change, and it can change in a heartbeat. But if you are able to become aware of, one, the government that we have allows us certain health tests for free, because the ramification of not being well if you become unwell with that illness is probably multifold, because when you become unwell, you become a burden unnecessarily, because it may be one you could have not prevented. We're going to get sick at some point, but you may have been able to stop it from having the big impact on you if you'd been screened and maybe had the outcome and been able to then take the health care that would have been available at early detection. But there's also that if you become unwell, your family, what do they do when you're not the breadwinner anymore? You can't work. What do you do if you're not insured and you can't get financial coverage to support you while you're going through your health care? What happens when you're away from work? Someone else has to do the work. And while that may all sound quite doom and gloom, it's just that we have to be able to think those things through to remind us that, well, I really need to take care of my health. I hadn't thought, well, if I got sick, all those things could happen. And we can't even take our age for granted. And like, yes, we tend to think that once you get perhaps towards the age of 60 plus, you're going to become sick with something. We kind of have that sense of inevitability, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case either. And conversely, even when you are younger, you don't have to expect that you're just going to be bulletproof and forever live. Young people get sick too. So I think it's really important that we recognise we need to take responsibility for our health and be proud to do so, and be thankful for the government services that are available, particularly like the ones that you are actively involved in. Is there anything that you would want to let the audience know about in terms of your experiences and some of the highlights to the role that you have there at Cancer Council?
Well, you said that really well, actually. Exactly as you mentioned, because of my lived experience, I can say that it doesn't affect just the person, it impacts the whole family and the whole, it's again getting back to what I do and why I do that if you want to contribute to the community, you need to be healthy. And once you get sick, it will affect the whole surrounding of you. So if you have the opportunity to prevent it, even if you are in a hard situation, keep your health prioritized, because it is like ripple effect. It will affect everything else, your working, your income, your education, your children, and your livelihood. So definitely it's a priority.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I believe that you've also been involved, not all too long ago, with the formation of a business that you founded, and share a little bit about the involvement you had there.
Sure. Well, in 2019, I was leading a project for the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission, and I had a colleague there that it was a really interesting interaction. The first day that we met, and when she heard what I've done and what is my experience, she told me, "Oh, we should work together and we should have this business." And I was thinking, you don't even know me, why you want to have a business with me? But I think it actually continued, and we thought about it. And by end of 2019, when I completed my project and finished my work with the commission, she suggested we establish this company in this partnership. And by October 2019, we established the Human Equity Consultation. It is a successful business. By end of last year, I became so busy, and the COVID affected my life so much that I suggested her to take the lead and gave her the business, but I'm still the principal consultant in that work. And we work with organizations to support them and consult them on gender equality, diversity and inclusion in general, and cultural diversity, sexual harassment at workplace, and safe workplaces. Our skill set is very different, but is complementing each other. And I'm really happy. We have a very unique skill set because we both work in general diversity and inclusion and equity, which is less practice. And we both believe that you need to embed it as a principle of your work and your society. So we have a very specific structure of working toward that.
Excellent, excellent. So when you say that you both found or became partners in this particular business, and now I believe your partner is the one that runs that business now, when you say that it was involved in diversity and so many other areas that you were working in, what was it that drove you toward creating that platform? Were there experiences that you both had, or was it just that you were both passionate about that area? Share perhaps a story about what was involved and what you actually achieved.
Well, that's true, all of it actually, because we both had experience in that from different aspects. My work is more about community engagement and stakeholder engagement of this side, and she's a lawyer, so she was looking at from the legal and legislation background. And it created a holistic approach. And the work that we have done is because of our passion, especially the gender equity. And I think intersectionality is something that we're both very passionate about. And we believe that together we can progress the gender equity and work with community and with organizations to support them and help them to improve. And we can equip workplaces to have this better equity, actually. Excellent. Sophisticated equity, in another word.
Yeah, wow, that's very, very fascinating, and really and important, really important too, because we obviously have seen many stories within the media about areas that are not handled well in any workplace, without going too much into anything in this particular interview. But I'm interested to know in terms of Rana in 5 years' time, what do you foresee as being where you will be? What's your next major project or role that you're looking to take on in maybe the next 5 years or so?
Well, if you ask me, I can tell you that I'm a natural born planner. I love to plan. And even I planned for our wedding, and it was like on a Trello board. Everything is clear what we will do. So definitely I have short-term plans, long-term plans, medium-term plans, and the 5-year plan is a medium-term plan. And what I think I really need to work on, I'm working on having very structured and strong advocacy
Mm-hmm.
for women, especially young women, and people of my community, and people of color in general, and anybody who needs to become an active bystander or an ally and change the behavior of the community toward a really positive, progressive, and successful community and society.
Excellent. Wow. Excellent. And I believe you've also discovered a passion for public speaking. What's been your journey there?
Well, that's a good question. In 2 years ago, I was with Commission again, and we were talking about hobbies. One of my colleagues asked me, "What is your hobby?" And it took me 1 hour to think about what is my hobby, and I realized since I moved to Australia, I don't have a real hobby. And exactly after that, I've got an invitation to talk in a panel for Equal Employment Opportunity Network. I really enjoyed that day because I was in a panel with some amazing people like Karen Millward and Matthew Parker, and we were talking about culturally and psychologically safe workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
So it was our shared lived experience to be shared. And when I came back to office, I just told my colleague, I think I found my hobby and I really love to be a public speaker. And amazingly, my manager of the time was very supportive of that. She's a prominent poet and writer. So she was thinking, yes, you can, and it really fits you and you will enjoy that. So do that. And I started to get invitation. As soon as I get an invitation, I just jump on it and I do that. And it's my hobby now to do public speaking and share my story.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really, and I think that what's really fascinating about that is that the list of the things that people fear the most, number one often is fear of public speaking. And we know that there's a lot of layers behind that, but ultimately, I think what really matters about being a speaker, and that is one of the things that I have been developing as a skill set as well, is being able to be that voice and speak up on behalf of those people who can't, whether it be because they verbally cannot speak, something's happened to restrict their ability to speak, whether it be illness or trauma, or it might be that they don't have the language skill set to be able to do that. There could be any number of reasons why they're unable to speak up on their own behalf. And it's really important that there be voices like yourself to be able to do that. And it is quite addictive in the positive sense, in the sense that it feels really powerful to be able to make a difference in the world by using your voice. And I think that's really why I've been drawn to doing these sorts of interviews, because I get to hear some amazing stories from people like yourself and how using the voice to stand up on behalf of those who can't just makes, well, it could make a world of difference. And I think that's really important, that you share your story in a way that shows that your story reflects the stories of others. And these are some of the potential steps that we all can take in various different ways if we are supported with resources and I suppose the common values and the community around us, that with those supports, we can make a difference collectively. And I think that's really, really valuable. So in terms of the future for you, Rana, obviously you do have a plan. I love the fact that you're a planner and you've got things set down. Now you mentioned, and I'll pick up on this, you said that your 5-year plan is a medium-term plan. What's your long-term plan?
It's a 10-year plan, and probably is, well, I share it with you because I really want to go back to United Nations and continue my work there. I'm really lucky because I have a very supportive husband to join me on this adventure, and that's our plan, long-term plan. After I get my citizenship and I complete what I'm doing in Australia, definitely I'm trying to join back the United Nations. Mm-hmm. And in getting back to what you just mentioned, I think you pointed out something really important, which is characteristics of a public speaker, that a public speaker has this opportunity to share a voice and share a story. It's not necessarily their own story. They need to be active listeners as well and listen to the stories of the people and share that from their platform. Mm-hmm. So I totally agree. It's an opportunity, and I really want to use that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
And it is my long-term plan as well, that definitely I continue using this voice and getting more stories and sharing them as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's super important. And you make a good point there about the fact that if we as speakers, it's not all about our own voice, it's about being able to hear the stories of others, in particular those people who are not able to take to a platform of any kind and speak up. But we need to be able to hear the stories of the people around us who may not have what it takes to be able to speak up for themselves, but for then us to be the voice for those people. And I think that's a privilege to be able to do that. And I think if we all exercise that privilege in the right way, we all can make a huge difference on this planet. And I think that's something that, at least that's what I would like to be a part of, and that's why I do what I do. And I think you've certainly echoed that quite effectively. So what's ahead for you in the next couple of years? Obviously, you're working towards these plans. Is there any particular project or anything that you would like to see that you are actively part of now that's going to have a ripple effect going forward?
Yes, I'm actually the silver lining for the COVID for me was that I really like to sit on boards and working with other team members on making sure that an organization is on right track. So through this time, I had more opportunity, because I didn't have to commute all the time, to sit on these boards and think together with other people to decide for some organizations. And I think that's something really important for me, to be able to have a shared thought leadership with some people that are in the same mindset. I also enjoy that we have different mindsets and we respect each other's diversity in the room. So it's something that I can use as a best practice in the work that we are doing with my business partner.
Excellent. So you're quite accomplished, really. I mean, you're part of the thought leadership, you're part of being a speaker and representing others, and you're obviously actively involved in various community activities and organizations. It sounds to me like you're somebody that if an opportunity is placed before you and it aligns with your personal morals and your codes of your own personal conduct, you're all in. It sounds like that's the kind of person you are.
Yes, I don't know if the opportunistic is a positive word or not, but I am all on in for the opportunity. I'm more realistic, but I try to see the positiveness of something and grab that and grow that in any activity that we are doing, because we all have differences and similarities, and going forward, we need to create that synergy and bridge that similarity. While we cannot forget about our differences, I have lots of challenges as well. It's not something easy. It can be very challenging, especially when it clashes with my core value. I'm challenged, but I try to have this dialogue with that challenge and create the avenue of this bridging and synergy, because if we just go on negatively and we just think that it's a battle, we will not get anywhere soon. We can see even in the world right now, war is not something that will get us to some success and some happiness.
No, that's true. So true. Wow. It's been an incredible conversation, and I've really valued the opportunity that we've had to share this conversation today. Now, obviously, we could recap as I tend to do, which is what is it you do, why do you do it, and who do you do it for? I think in summary, there's just, you've got such a large, diverse platform of things that you do. What's a parting statement that you would like to leave with the audience about your journey and what's ahead and what's possible?
Well, I always give myself as an example that I'm a petite young woman immigrant who came to another country, started from zero, bringing up and the experience that I had. But I'm very proud that I have a voice now and I can talk and advocate for the others. And I think it's really important to say that mentorship and being an ally and supporter to other people, especially young women, is something really important that I really want to have it a call for action, that please try to support and don't think that you don't have anything to share, because every person has their own struggle, their own success, and it's important to share it with the others to clear a road for the others.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's so important. I think the power that we all have within us to make a difference around the world can't be underestimated. It's just sad that at the moment, I think a lot of people feel so overwhelmed and not able to see a pathway that they can take that can make a difference if they were to take the action. And like, it's simple as, you know, maybe donating some time. You don't always have to have the money to do something. If you're feeling that, oh, I'm not wealthy enough, I can't make those changes, sometimes it's just your time that can make the difference. Being present with other people, just holding someone's presence, being in their space and letting them know that they're not alone, just being with other people in a positive way, sharing what is human about being human, whether it be, you don't always have to be absolutely, completely upbeat and positive, because being human means sometimes we're going to face those dark times and the difficulties and the challenges, as you mentioned, but we don't have to be completely controlled by them. Yes, it's normal to have grief and sadness and trauma, but in the sense of that's what the world is about, but we have to find a positive way to engage with other people, as you say, to support and be around other people and just be someone prepared to just take that little step forward and help others. And I think if we all did that, what an amazing world we'd be in.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Rana. Thank you so much for your time today. And for our listeners, if you've not subscribed to this channel, Voice on Fire Interviews with Intention, now is that time to click that red button and even share the videos with some of your friends, peers, colleagues, family. Let them know that there are people out in the world that are making a difference. Find that inspiration, find the motivation to be one of those people, or at least support and find a way within your community to make a difference, whether it's in your community locally, nationally, or internationally. Let's make a difference. Let's be the voice on fire. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Rana. Thank you for your time, and thank you to the audience.
Thank you.